welcome Marjorie Baker Price.
Thank you. Very glad to be here. I feel such a sense of connection in the short time that we've been together, and it's kind of nice to see all your smiling faces from the heights here. It's fun to be standing where I'm standing. I loved the earlier talk about how we get to where we end up in life, or where we find ourselves in the present moment. And when I think about the world that I was born into in the 1950s, to give my age away, and the world now, it is quite a changed world. And I think that we live in very chaotic and complicated times when there is a resurgence of what I would call a lot of grassroots initiative, and times when some major systems we read and experience in various ways in our life seem to be within a point of breakdown. And so this is an exciting time. It's a time of crises, which from the Chinese translation means both danger and opportunity. And to be able to ride some of these unique waves that are bringing about transformation, I think no matter what our particular view of that is, can be quite a challenge. There was a saying that became very popular a few years ago that we have to learn to run smarter, not faster, because nobody goes at top speed and really realistically expects to win a race. Years and years ago, I used to do a lot of running. It's more a matter of the turtle mentality, as I call it, being able to go the distance. We exist in states of balance. We always are experiencing in the changes of our lives particular places or points of balance. And so it becomes a keen challenge, particularly in our times, to be able to discern as accurately as possible, well, what is my current state of balance? And if for some reason it seems that that may not be sustainable, or that in order to continue to adapt and move forward in a way that makes sense to me, I need to be able to shift where my balance is, leads me to the concept of centering, which happens to be the name of my practice and my not-for-profit. I started my practice 25 years ago. I was saying over lunch that when I began my practice as a nurse who in those days did something that was unthinkable, to step away from organizational work and kind of do my thing. Nobody in my area in Rochester, New York was doing anything like that. The word holistic was virtually unknown. Well, the times have caught up with me. And now centering and holistic and out-of-the-box thinking and grassroots initiative and empowerment and self-healing are quite commonly understood and utilized. They're utilized by corporations, by organizations, and we're beginning more and more within the individual scope of our lives to feel that we must return to our innate centers in order to survive and in order to ride those waves. Now, centering is not a word that is measurable in strictly concrete terms. So we can't see it, hear it, taste it, smell it, or in some designated scientific way, according to traditional forms of assessment, get it so that we can put our hands around it. And yet we know quite easily, quite quickly, do we not, when we feel centered and when we are not feeling centered. I think that, as Gandhi said, you must be the change you wish to see in the world. And a significantly lesser known speaker, which moves me to reveal my own ethnic background, Rabbi Hillel in 500 AD, said, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If not now, when? To me, this is not meant to be a selfish comment, but it is meant to recover the fact that we can only truly be ourselves. Sometimes we find our way to being ourselves in the midst of great crises. Suddenly, a person emerges that we may not even have known or forgotten was there. That self is what we can offer in the world. That creative, free, authentic, integrative self that comes from a place of integrity that makes sense to us as an individual. And when we have that base, we have great strength. We can inspire ourselves and share and offer correspondingly to others to make courageous choices, not deluding ourselves into denying our own fear and anxiety, but instead understanding that in each and every moment we really have enormous capacity to choose, to create, and we have the right to be free. I think that all of these components of a centered person, of a truly recovered person in that sense, can quite magnificently and miraculously join with anyone and everyone in the world to create win-win solutions. There are no win-lose solutions. I think that is a paradigm that has had its day and really is meant to be put to rest or even shoved aside. When one person wins, another person is meant to win. And that win-win scenario is meant to extend to us as individuals. There are many parts to us. We're complicated, us human beings. And so when we are in a point of center, all parts of us, parts that may still be rooted in the past, in a desired future, in particular focuses within a complicated, present-oriented, accelerating life, have to come together in a harmonious and integrative way. And then, and only then, we're able to move forward. So in my practice and in offering educational programs within my not-for-profit corporation, I do a lot of work with simple and fundamental approaches that could be called self-help approaches, and they are. They could be called holistic approaches, and they are. They could be called empowerment approaches, and they are. They help us open up insight. They help us detach from whatever might be a source of struggle, whatever might result in feeling pulled down with a dramatic erosion of self-esteem and a tremendously emerging stress response. And these tools include meditation, relaxation, visualization, which have been quite popular now since when they were first researched in the 60s. And also I do a lot of work with writing exercises. In addition, from a holistic perspective, and this is currently being more and more recognized through our government as well and around the world, I do a lot of work with energy healing. From a clinical standpoint, I have a strong background in recovery therapies involving addictions, including codependency and chemical addictions. And that was a tremendous experience for me when I had that component of my past work, which literally launched my centering tools practice. And the interesting thing for me in doing that work within a clinic that was newly opened at the time was that I was shocked to see that the 12-step program, and historically I kind of tracked this and found it very interesting, is a spiritually based program of healing, recovery, and development. It's generic. So it has nothing to do with a person's individual choice of religion, but it has to do, I think, with recovering what to me is our own innate spirit. I think we can afford truly to sacrifice anything in our life but that. I think when we feel connected to that, which is kind of the soul or the core of being centered, we can really effect tremendous healing, development, and regain who and what we are in order to in turn offer in the world. So I'm kind of circling back to everybody wins here, everybody wins. So some of the tools that I'm going to offer is a bit of an experiential piece today, and I dare say these might be very familiar to all of you, definitely to all of you, because when I ask people if they've ever meditated before, if they've ever done relaxation or imagery before, more and more hands have gone up in the decades that I've been doing these presentations. The kicker, though, is when I say, well, do you ever daydream? how come it's okay for kids to daydream? We heard earlier discussion about forming a dream, and a currently popular word is visioning. When we're able to go into ourselves, to detach from whatever outside of ourselves we happen in the moment to be attached to, and we align ourselves with the natural rhythm and course of our breath, not only do we de-stress ourselves both physiologically, emotionally, mentally, and so on, but we open up that deeper level insight. We access the subconscious, which is about 88% of the capacity of our thinking processes, that for us as we run around in our lives externally focused is a largely underutilized, to say the least, portion of our brain. We open it up and we transcend beyond the day-to-day, which allows us to literally take a breather. And when that happens, we return in a different place with a larger perspective. And that's kind of the key to run smarter, not faster. So I do a lot of that work. Writing engages us creatively, and it returns a sense of authentic honesty and integrity to us. And so that inner strengthening piece emerges. We are completely different from each other, and yet I think we have full capacity to truly get along beyond conditioning, beyond fear, and beyond how hugely we're conditioned to be afraid of the unknown. Guess what? That's the way it is here. There are no guarantees. A perfect performance is not required, nor does it ever happen. And somehow we have the goods to make our way in the world. So I've given you some handouts today that I want to refer to. And you can also go to my website. I have information about that, centeringtools.com, which has a lot of equivalent handouts and some of the ones that you have. It's primarily a blog-centered site. There are also some guided meditation audios on there. And I do a newsletter, which is free, where I send out a lot of articles, related announcements, and so on. So what I want to take you through today is a little bit of a meditation exercise. These are never the same for me. I don't work that way. It's kind of all about being live. I think if we can't be live, if we can't be present, we're missing a lot, and we separate ourselves from healing, from development, from empowerment, from possibility. And so I hope to take you through a meditative exercise around centering. And you have a handout, which is one of the thousands of meditative exercises, the visioning exercises that I've created for all kinds of individuals and organizations over the years. And then I hope to take you through a brief writing exercise that I created called note-taking. When we center ourselves, we're meant to be very energy efficient. By that I mean it's not right for us to discard any part of ourselves. I think we live in a culture where we've been hugely conditioned that feelings are dangerous, there are good versus bad feelings, and we need to keep them under wraps, control them, etc. And I think that creates a schism within our personality in mental health terms, and we lose a lot because, in fact, feelings tell the truth. They connect with physical sensations, with body signals, and most importantly, with the intuition, with insight. When they're allowed to run freely, they process themselves, and we're meant to allow our feelings to take us, and they will, all the time, to a new, deeper, larger level of understanding. Then we truly become our own greater self, our own best self. And again, what then does that open up in terms of potential for problem solving, for offering? So that's why I do so much work with journaling and so on in my practice. Hans Selye, if you have come across him back in the 50s, did some terrific research. I remember first hearing about him in a college course when I was in nursing school about stress. And he said that when we go into a stress response, it is a hardwired, I would call it physiological response, that throws us into what he called fight flight. And there are difficult to discern stressors in the world today. They truly can be very overwhelming, and so that kind of enhances how stressed we can feel and produces a corresponding shutdown of everything other than fight or flight. So the key is feeling threatened. When we are feeling stressed, we are really coming from a place of feeling threatened. And in order to cope with that, we start categorizing what the perceived stressor or threatening factor is, and we make a decision as to whether we're going to run away from it or annihilate it in order to survive. Now, this cuts down on creative thinking, it cuts down on freedom, and it changes physiologically what goes on in our body. And so every major physiological system in our body kind of goes haywire. So the breathing can become rapid and shallow, the heartbeat can become irregular, the circulation then is adversely affected, elimination is adversely affected. There can be sensations of pain relating to the anxiety. Literally, the veins and arteries constrict. There's a whole series of complicated physiological responses that occur because we're being mobilized to either puff ourselves up and annihilate the perceived stressor or run out of the way. And so the first order of business when we are in the midst of a stress response, and too much to do can very easily create that, let alone inner buttons. So if, for example, I've been profoundly traumatized in my childhood, and I suddenly find myself running into a person who behaves and speaks and presents herself in such a way that somehow a button goes off inside of me, and I start viewing her not as she is in the present, but as some version of, let's say, my mother, then that dictates the response. It's a knee-jerk response. And so to be able to lift up and out of that, which is a lot of what produces power struggles, which have a tremendous wear-down effect, cause us to spin our wheels, and they become a quick, direct dive to lose-lose solutions. So when we can ease out of and or jump out of that stress response, we're able to take a breath and view what is going on in our life very differently. So I wanted to briefly talk to you, I have some notes, my cheat sheet here, about the 3 keys to care for yourself and to offer to the world in our very challenging times. Complicated, chaotic world. We're all interested in well-being and success. I think we're understandably perhaps afraid and concerned and really realizing that things are very significantly changing, and so what we experienced in the past, maybe even counted on, is not what we're reasonably expecting to run into going forward. So 3 keys. First is open, second is clear, and third is shift. Wants and needs need to be harmonized and ideally the same. So to be able to know what we want and in an open, reflective space of consideration, more greatly discern what we need, forms the groundwork to be willing to be open, because in that stress response, we're not willing to be open. We're pushed into fight, flight. So the first order of business is to breathe. Second, in order to clear, we're able to go into a space of detachment from whatever is grabbing us, entangling us, concerning us in the moment. Because we've all lived long enough to know that life goes on, and today's crisis is going to disappear one way or the other and become something else tomorrow. It's kind of like there's a revival of Follies on Broadway. So if you've ever seen that, the song "I'm Still Here," yeah? I find myself relating to that the older I get. And then the third piece is to shift. So when we've opened and cleared, it's a question of now what? We're always focusing on something. Goals are meant to be open-ended. We're meant to understand that we can only conceive of a goal based on where we are in the moment. And so in the future, we will be in a different place, guaranteed. And so the willingness to stay open and to trust, which is such a key word. When we're stressed, we don't trust anything because we're, again, in that fight-flight mode. So in order to put a little bit of focus in our complicated, pressured, stress-filled, challenging lives on just stepping off the merry-go-round. And fortunately, a little of that goes a long way to balance, going back to what I said earlier about balancing. We tell ourselves that it is okay for 5 minutes or 10 minutes every day or more than one time a day to let go. When we're stressed, we don't let go of anything. I believe in our culture that we're quite strongly conditioned as well to avoid letting go at all costs. But of course, if we think about what happens when we breathe, we inhale, but we have to exhale, let it out, let go. So a quick recommendation that I usually tell people that I want to pass along to you is check in with yourself every day and say, what have I let go of today? If you can't really figure it out, this is a signal to do something. That's where my handout, 45 Surefire Ways to Relieve Stress, comes in, which I can send you through my website too. And the origin of this handout, I have a lot of warm feelings about. It was when I worked before launching my practice in what was then a newly opened alcoholism outpatient treatment center in Rochester, New York. And one night, coordinating stress management, I asked the group of probably about 30 people who were all there mostly because they didn't want to be. They were generally ordered by some force, legal and otherwise. Well, if you can't drink and things get to you, what can you do? So mostly men in that group. In about 15 minutes, they came up with 45 surefire ways to relieve stress. So I'm like writing everything down on the board in those days. This was the 80s, and this was the list. Simple things. They go out the window when we get caught up. Go for a walk. That's a really grounding, centering thing to do. Call up a friend. Take a bath. Showers can be very cleansing in lots of ways. Take 10 deep breaths, et cetera, et cetera. We don't think of these things, and so the reason that I created the list was, here's your list. What happens if you try one of these for 45 days, which incidentally is how many days it takes to break a habit? See what happens. So these are key centering approaches. Also, one of my blog articles, 10 tips to staying centered every day. I want to specifically call your attention to number 8, which says, ask yourself, what choice do I have 3 times? Magic number, we're talking about 3 here today, and write down whatever answers come up. Adults are never victims. Never. Children are victims. Adults are never victims. We are never victims. Every second we are choosing. If you reflect on your day and write a little journal entry of how you spent 15 minutes, every single thing that you did represented a choice. That can really bring home the truth that we really do have the power to choose. It's a matter of getting in a space, though, because we can't choose if we're not feeling free. So that's kind of the kicker. So now I just want to talk briefly, and I mentioned the handout, which is a centering exercise, written version of a guided meditation that I did a number of years ago. Discover the power of meditation in 10 minutes or less. Meditation is the foundation of all visioning. That idea of generating and conceptualizing within a creative, intuitive center is how I would define it. Our dream, what we really want, why I'm wearing this heart necklace that a friend of mine made and gave to me, kind of coming from the heart, a place of truth and freedom and emotional engagement which is critically important for centering. We need to be fully emotionally engaged. So I work a lot with what I call backdoor approaches. I think we can wrap ourselves up and entangle ourselves into, I must do it right. How complicated can I make something? If we're talking about going into a zoning space, which I think is my backdoor title for meditation, if we're laying on our back in a comfortable aligned position, or we're sitting with our legs and arms uncrossed in a fairly comfortable aligned position, and we close our eyes, we're in a really great space to meditate, in my view. I understand meditation comes from magnificent spiritual traditions located both within our own Native American tradition in this country and in the East, and there are a number of additional specific factors. I'm not particularly focused on that. There are wonderful teachers and practitioners who are. I defer to them. I'm talking about what can be used very quickly and essentially to take a breather. So at this point, I would like to invite you all to settle back. I meditate as well when I do these guided exercises, and so I close my eyes. That kind of knocks out 88% of stimuli, which comes from my vision, and lets me stay focused. And invite you to listen up for just a few minutes and see what happens, okay? It's very easy to settle back into a comfortable, supported, relaxed position, perhaps shifting your body a bit so your body feels balanced, free, open. Eyes closed then, as I am now doing. Begin to notice the sense of your own inhaled and exhaled breath. In these opening moments, your breath, your rising and falling breath, seems to quite easily and naturally sort itself out, free itself, establish its core flowing rhythm. You could imagine your endless breath as its own free wave moving all around and through you now, your inhaled and exhaled breath from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, nurturing, opening, clearing, uplifting each and every body part in turn, over and over, over and over, again and again, again and again. Count to yourself then 3 full, deep, easy breaths. Count them now to yourself. Observing your sensations, your sense now through your opening, flowing breath. What seems to be going on inside your body, inside your mind? Aware of how each and every time you inhale, you receive life-giving air and oxygen. And each and every time you exhale, you release tension, stress, blockage. For these next several breaths now, as you inhale, say to yourself this word, receive. As you exhale, say to yourself this word, release. More and more, deep and deeper still, you are aware of how you experience here these sensations of letting be, letting go. And so, for these next several breaths, as you inhale, say to yourself this phrase, let be. As you exhale, say to yourself this phrase, let go. It's as if your endless breath is its own light cocoon, like a circle without beginning, without end, and you held so effortlessly, so freely in the center, lifted higher and higher, higher and higher, just floating here, now, just being here, now. For these next several breaths, say this word, center, 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 to yourself. Experience now. Know that these connections stay, and you remember each and every time you settle back comfortably, close your eyes, allowing your breath to quite easily and naturally deepen, more and more, deep and deeper still. Receive, release, let be, let go in your own clear, free center. These connections stay, and you remember now. And so it is time to return, coming full circle, aware of how the endlessly flowing rhythms of your inhaled and exhaled breath in turn so easily and naturally carry you back and back until once more then, as you're ready, you reach this room, this place, and then open your eyes. A couple of other key components, like they say in the movies, don't answer the door, turn off the cell phone. This is not an experience that works when you're interrupted. So this is relax, release, recharge, and it fuels us to run smarter from a higher perspective. Insight opens, energy returns, stress leaves. That's the kind of 1, 2, 3 punch that allows us to return from a place of trust and knowing how easy it is for us to take this little trip. It's cheap too, no side effects, yeah, we know how to do this. And then regroup. As far as the journaling is concerned, years ago in working with a client who has struggled quite courageously and with many, many challenges to break a long-standing addiction, I created what I call note-taking as a 5-minute writing exercise. And this is the other experiential piece that I would like to take you through. So, one task for each minute for 5 minutes. And there is an article on note-taking in my Centering Tools website. You can look it up under the journaling title at the left margin of the page. So minute 1 is ask yourself one question and stick to the focus of the question when you answer. How am I feeling in this moment? So we're talking about happy, angry, sad, lonely, anxious, tired, depressed, confused, etc., etc. Write down as many feeling sensations with a word or phrase as come to mind. So that's minute 1. Minute 2 is pick one feeling, just one. Maybe one will seem to jump off the page. That would be the one to pick in my recommendation. And whatever that feeling is, in that second minute, close your eyes and somehow, after you take a few deep, free breaths, move yourself to focus on that feeling. So what typically happens for people is they become aware of associated body sensations, and they really begin to see what's kind of going on inside of them, just for a minute. That's all you have for this one. Experience the feeling, and that would be imaginatively and through simply observing. So you kind of get to be Ben Franklin here, using yourself as your own best experiment. I think that's how we are truly meant to live our lives. It's all about an experiment. I am my own best customer. I tell people that all the time, and I'm very serious when I say that. You experience kind of within yourself that feeling, and that's the second minute. The third minute is you come out and you record what happened in that minute. So maybe you're going to take some notes about feeling you might be focused on is anxious. And so all of a sudden you're aware that your stomach is kind of like, so you're going to kind of note that. Maybe you might even want to draw a little picture. Picture's worth 1,000 words. I do a lot of work with having clients draw as well as write, and it really reveals a lot. It's a very helpful empowerment and healing tool. So that's that minute. Fourth minute is you read what you wrote. So you kind of return to the experience. When we read what we write, it kind of speaks to us on a whole other level, and typically will yield even additional, greater, more intuitive insight and clearer perception. And so in the 5th minute, you write anything that you want to add. That's note-taking. Yeah? Want to try it? Okay. So, happy to lead you through this. We begin with the question. Questions are the key, not answers. Questions, questions, questions. Kind of opens, opens, opens. So, kind of settle back, and you can close your eyes if you want. Kind of ask yourself, how do I feel? And then for a minute, write down any and all feelings that come to mind. And then we'll be moving into the second minute, which is you pick, as you're ready, one feeling to focus on. Here, take a couple of deep cleansing breaths, settle back, close your eyes, and kind of imagine and sense that you really are going inside of you to see what this feeling has to say to you, show you, be with it. Perhaps there will be body sensations, thoughts, feelings. Just experience your sense of this feeling for about a minute now. And then, as you come out of this focus, take another minute and record what happened. This can include diagramming, a bit of sketching. Write down as if you were a newspaper reporter writing this experience. Notes are fine. And as in this minute you finish what you've recorded, take another minute and read what you wrote. Notice how it strikes you. Take a moment to just allow that to happen in this minute. And then finally, sliding into the final minute, record any additional insights that occur. This is a very holistic, self-healing exercise that engages what is currently called emotional intelligence, a keenly sought after goal by heads of organizations, corporations, and for good reason. To me, this helps, along with meditation, return you to your center. We're meant to partner with ourselves and with each other from a place of awareness, freedom, and recognizing that we all truly are only and always equal, bringing our own particular parts together in a new and greater balance in order to support, as Gandhi said finally, coming full circle, being the change we wish to see in the world. So I wish you happy landings, and I appreciate your time and being a good sport. I do have related products, many audios, guided meditation, hypnosis audios, and also journaling books and self-healing development and intuitive spiritual development courses. They are all on my website and they're here for you. You can sign up to get my newsletter, which is free, with a lot of related articles on the home page of my website. Happy trails. So.